home with your family? How are you passing the time?
You know, we're fortunate under the circumstances. Basically, I take my kids back and forth between one grandma's house and the other grandma's house, and that's it. That's all. That we don't go anywhere else. It's been fine. I go from my kids driving me absolutely nuts to just savoring every minute that we have together. But this situation that we're in right now is just so surreal. I mean, we are living through a period that is going to be read about in history books in perpetuity. So, just recognizing the significance of this period is, has not gotten lost on me at all.
Yeah. Hi, Lisa. This is Sarah. A few days ago, you wrote a message to the president on your Instagram page asking him why he was choosing to call the coronavirus the China virus. Why did you want to call this out, and what do you think his reason for doing this is?
Well, I was pretty astounded when he started calling the coronavirus the Chinese virus. I mean, it's been months since this crisis began, and to me, it just seemed like a way to deflect attention from the fact that he was not taking it seriously for months and months. I just didn't understand why, of all people and of all times, he would start to call this virus that has a name. Its name is COVID-19. Yeah. He's the only person the world over who started to call it the Chinese virus. It seemed like he was deflecting blame.
Yeah. Lisa, you've talked about how dangerous this is for the Asian American community, and I completely agree with you. I was so infuriated when the President of the United States started calling it the China virus and the Wuhan virus. Have you or any of your family and friends experienced any racism since the President started calling it the Chinese virus?
Oh, absolutely. I have friends, kids who've been taunted. I have friends who have talked about being harassed in places. And if you Google stories about Asians being harassed since the president started calling this Chinese virus, there are countless stories. In fact, the National Crisis text hotline has had a sizable increase of Asians reporting that they are feeling depressed because they've been bullied and because they feel like they are somehow responsible for this crisis because the president has characterized it as the Chinese virus.
Wow.
Hey, Lisa, it's Megan. I think all of us are in agreement that any kind of racism or bigotry directed towards any Asian American is not something that we can stand. It's disgusting, and I think we're all in agreement that it's not something that should be taking place in this country. All of that being said, I have had a lot of strong criticism about the Chinese government suppressing information coming out of the country. There was actually a whistleblower doctor who was incredibly brave trying to warn the rest of the world about the severity of COVID-19. He has since gone missing. No one knows where he is. Where do you think the fine line is in the media where we can still criticize the Chinese government and the communist regime for, suppressing information and letting it get this far?
Well, it's a great question, Megan, and I by no means have any love or affection for the Chinese government, and I have found that their actions immediately after this virus was discovered in Wuhan, their actions have been indefensible. That doctor, may he rest in peace, who sounded the alarm that this is something that we should be concerned about, the world should be concerned about. The fact that he was arrested, to me, is unconscionable, absolutely unconscionable. But this idea that had we known the severity of it sooner, would have made us prepare even sooner, is somewhat ludicrous, because now we're months into this crisis now, and up until very, very recently, up until it actually hit the United States, our president was in denial about it and still calling it a hoax. I mean, my own husband, when 35 people had died of this virus in China and thousands of people had been affected, this is very, very early on. My own husband said, this is something different. I have never witnessed a virus that was spreading so quickly. This is going to have serious, serious consequences. the most prominent virologists in the world were saying this has to be taken seriously. And it wasn't until it hit U.S. soil. And even, I mean, it was even weeks after the first person died in Washington state that the president started becoming more serious about this. So this
How
idea
can we
that
change
Point
that
out
in the
also
future?
that January, they knew in
how can we change
January
that?
this was coming.
1 second, Whoopi. But how can we change this going forward? Because there's a lot of anger and a lot of frustration and a lot of fear with, I would say, the great swath of the American public. And I don't disagree with you that this administration at this point, I mean, to say that they're going to have a lot of answering to do with the slow response is putting it extremely mildly. But what can we learn from this just as citizens in the United States? Because clearly, if there's one thing we've learned, it's that we cannot trust the government to look out for us in a situation like this.
Well, and that's the thing. And we could sit here and blame China until we're blue in the face, but how is that going to help us right now? The fact of the matter is that we have just passed 1,000 Americans who have died of coronavirus. Our hospitals are hugely overwhelmed. There is this invisible and silent killer amongst us, and we need to address it now. So focusing on blaming China isn't going to do us any good now. In fact, if anything, we should be asking China for help. They have reported no new cases of coronavirus. We should be saying, okay, how can you help us now? Because we are now the epicenter of the world.